Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Independent Trucker Show right here at the Truckers Independent Broadcasting Networks with your hosts, John Grosvenor and JoJo Beretta. And with us today, we have Mr. Todd McKinley. How you guys doing tonight?
How you all doing?
Oh, doing good, man. I appreciate it.
We're doing. I want to apologize to everybody. The last couple of weeks, we didn't have a show. Joe and I didn't think it was prudent to compete with the Super Bowl. I just don't think we're quite that level. And Valentine's Day was Sunday, so we didn't want to compete with that either. Everybody needs to spend time with the person they love. So, but we are on here tonight. We hope to have a good time here. Like I said, with our guest Todd. Todd, you have some background. You ran in 2018 for U.S. Congress, correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct. Yeah, 2018, I ran in the Republican primary here in Tennessee's 1st Congressional District. That's correct.
And now you, in the meantime, you got 20 years of military experience. You spent
Right.
6.5 years of that time guarding the White House.
Yeah, so 20 years in the Army. I spent 6.5 years at what's called the White House Military Office within the White House Communications Agency. And it's anybody wants to Google this, they can. It's actually the largest entity within the Executive Office of the President. It's a permanent entity. So whenever the administrations change, these people don't leave. It's an apolitical job. So you're a permanent staff that's there. I did continuity of the government, continuity of the presidency. So anybody who watches those cool videos about, the doomsday type plans, that's kind of the stuff I worked in, which is fairly interesting to tell you the truth. We could talk for days about that stuff. I mean, it's just pretty wild stuff. And got really close to a lot of people within, say, the Republican Party, the Bush-Cheney administration. And that's kind of how really I got involved in politics, really. It's kind of, mind you, I couldn't get involved officially, if you will. But, personally, I really like politics from that point on. And that's how I kind of got this drive for it. And once I retired, really got full blown involved in politics. And I could go a little bit more in depth if you want me to in a little bit.
All right. Now, did you so there's a rumor going around that you actually worked Secret Service for a while. Is there any truth behind that, or?
No, not Secret Service. So I worked closely whenever I was in the White House military office. I worked very closely with Secret Service because I was on what is called the EA team, Emergency Actions Team. Worked hand in hand with the military aid and the physician to the vice president and the Secret Service special agent in charge. So very closely with those guys doing advance or traveling or just day-to-day operations in D.C., whether it's, motorcading here or there, what have you, on Marine 2, Air Force 2. But more recently, when I retired, I got involved as a White House staff associate. So I did a lot of advance work for the president, vice president especially. And more recently, I worked on the Trump campaign this past year. So worked very closely with Secret Service, right beside them. But no, it wasn't Secret Service. And people think that, just because you have the little curly Q, the surveillance kit, the radio, and people are like, oh, that's Secret Service. People may have seen a photo here and there, and they're like, oh, you're Secret Service. And it's like, no, not Secret Service. Work hand in hand with them. We do play a role in security in a sense to ensure we don't put our principal, in many cases it was the vice president, in a situation that would cause him to be exposed, if you will. So we work hand in hand with the Secret Service and ensure that we, follow certain security protocols. But we're not Secret Service, wasn't Secret Service, but a lot of experience working right alongside them.
So you coordinated with them?
Absolutely, yeah, coordinated with them, correct.
Awesome. Now, what was I lost my train of thought here. May of this year, a lot of guys
Right.
are going to be interested in hearing about this. May of this year, truck drivers went to D.C. and they were very interested in having a meeting with President Trump. And you and
Right.
I understand, or I think we all understand what a difficult process that may be, especially if you show up and start blowing air horns. But
Right, yeah.
a lot of guys were always curious to know what went on the inside. As far as how they were responding, how they were acting, I know they were hearing the horns because we saw the interview with Trump when he was interviewing in the Rose Garden, and they commented on it. But do you have any kind of inside information or any insight like that they might like to hear about?
I can tell you that I didn't necessarily, and I told you yesterday, I didn't work at the White House on a daily basis or anything like that. Most of my stuff was advanced work. But obviously I know a lot of people who were in the administration who were there. And, I can tell you that obviously they did hear the air horns for sure. But of course, you show up in Washington D.C. and you demand to see the president. That you're just not, unless you're Elvis Presley, you're not going to get in to see the president. That's just not going to happen. There's a process to get a meeting with the president, to have the president come to your town, to come to, your organization, whatever it may be. There's a full process. There's a vetting thing that goes on. So just to demand, hey, let us into the White House. We want a meeting. Really, that doesn't work that way. I guess if you showed up and you had a lot of people and you were civil and you were respectful, and of course you had you went through try to go through the right channels, you could probably get in, or some people in your organization could get in. But just showing up and honking horns is going to be seen as adversarial, or going to be seen as we capitulated by letting these people in. So then the next people that show up and protest, well, you're going to have to let them in, and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? It just never ends.
They did allow them in for a visit with the chief of staff.
Right.
But of course they made a meeting outside first before they brought them in to figure out what's going on. And as you said, I understand what you're saying, because in a political scene like that, especially during an election year, the president has a lot of concerns,
right,
with people that might be trying to set him up, make him look bad. But they did not get a meeting with the president himself as they wished.
Right.
They did get to meet some of the staff and things like that, and had a quick discussion.
And if you're getting in to see the chief of staff, I mean, he's the gatekeeper, for crying out loud. I mean, you're basically telling this guy, and he's going to go directly to the president and tell him what you just discussed verbatim for the most part. These are smart people that understand it. You had to think about it. You had a general who was a chief of staff. You had a former RNC chairman who was a chief of staff, and the most recently you had a longtime congressman who was a chief of staff, and I think he was probably the chief of staff at that time. So these people are very smart, very intellectual, so they understand a lot of the issues, and they probably went directly to the president and told him, all the things that he needed to know from that meeting right away. Yeah, and of course, the chief of staff, a lot of people may not know, he is also a cabinet level official as well. So you look at, and people look at all the different titles that are in the White House. He's an assistant to the president, and there's a number of assistants to the president, but he's like the assistant to the president. He's like the main guy because he's cabinet level. So he's the highest ranking person in the White House outside of the president and vice president.
So once you make connection with the chief of staff, you're 2 degrees away.
Basically, you're standing on the other side of that door, and he could open it or he could keep it shut. I mean, you're right there. And if you get a meeting with somebody like that, so you did a good job, to be honest with you. I mean, nice. you should never feel bad that you failed. You actually succeeded.
I think they did an excellent job. They were very orderly. I mean, they were not like I was recently looking at some videos of the riots and stuff.
Right.
Peaceful protesters. I'm sorry, I have to do the air quotes on that one.
Right.
And they were nothing like that. They were not tearing up stuff. They were very clean and orderly. They didn't make messes. They were doing campfires and things as far as cooking, but they were cleaning up after themselves. And I tell you, man, we got great people in trucking.
I would say from being there, to be honest with you, not only there was not even one single piece of trash in the ground, any point from anywhere, and there was no disrespect. And I agree 100%, especially when they were able to at least have the meeting with the chief of staff. Not only have a meeting with the chief of staff, but also bring awareness to the Department of Justice to be able to open up a case and the concerns among the actual transparency or the discrepancies of what brokers have realistically been doing. Right. So I think maybe it's had a lot of success when it comes to the concerns of that. Has it given the ultimate success? Because everybody wants to have what they call instant gratification. They want to think that they are there and there's going to be results and things are going to happen right now. It's just like you said, Todd, unfortunately, to meet with the high man or to where I'd say there have been times in which many have approached the idea of saying, well, can you just go to Congress and negotiate our terms? Well, Congress doesn't accept necessarily terms. They have to accept the legislation. So it's one of the things in which a lot of people need to be understand or aware of. I mean, you could try to be able to make this strike move or shutdown move, but it's not like you're going to demand the government to bend over your knee and say, this is what we want, and if you don't do it, then this is what's going to happen. It's not going to work like that.
Right.
That's the way how the system is. It's you have to come with a legislative proposal of what needs to be done to be brought before Congress. Unless, of course, it's going to be through a Budget Reconciliation Act. Well, I hope for that not to happen, to be honest.
I got a correction came in through Messenger. Leland Schmidt reminded me they did not make any demands to meet the president. Good. They made a request. And,
okay, good, good. That's the way to go, and that's the right way to go about it. It's very professional, and it's very cordial. It's civil. It's the right way to go. I mean, you wouldn't even go to your next door neighbor and demand to see him right then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You would ask, hey, can I talk to Joe? I have a few questions. If you don't mind, if he has a moment, you would request to talk to him. You know what I mean?
respect garners respect. And,
absolutely correct.
Disrespect somebody, especially in their own home, you got a problem.
Right.
We can understand that.
Right.
Now, meeting with the DOT, basically the Secretary of Transportation is a cabinet member. And that would be the same as being with
Secretary of Transportation is a cabinet member. Anybody that's a head of those departments that's a secretary is part of the cabinet. And then, of course, you have the Director of National Intelligence, who's a cabinet level official. You have several other people that aren't secretaries or department heads, but that are also cabinet level officials. There's a whole slew of them. I think the ambassador to the United Nations is at that level as well, because that's like a special type of ambassador, if you will, versus an ambassador to just one country. This is a UN ambassador is an ambassador to essentially all the countries, if you will, or all UN members anyway, which is nearly every country on the earth, if you will. Hmm. Yeah. So, and if you could Google, honestly, or just go to the White House website and see what all officials are at the cabinet level. Because I know Joe Biden is making, I think, John Kerry the climate czar. He's going to be a cabinet level official. But the next president that comes in, would they keep that position there? They could just nix it if they want to, because that's one of those at the discretion of the president. But there are some constitutional statutory offices, such as cabinet secretaries, that are constitutionally, mandated. So you have to have those. But there are several officials that are, could come and go or could be elevated to cabinet level official, just basically at the whim of the president.
Right. Well, they got to be vetted through Congress in order to be in those positions, as far as secretaries.
And not everybody that's at cabinet level is a successor to the president. Only the people that have the designator secretary of whatever, secretary of state, for example, is the highest ranking cabinet secretary official with regards to presidential succession. I mean, they're all technically on par with one another, but as far as presidential succession is concerned, he's the highest one. Then you go all the way down to the most recent one. I think Homeland Security is at the bottom, and then VA is above that one. And they're just basically, I think, in order of the way they were created. I'm thinking, I can't remember. But anyway, and you also have to be able to fit the constitutional the description as far as becoming president, because you have some people that were foreign born. For example, Madeleine Albright, she wasn't eligible to be a cabinet successor to the presidency. And there's been a number of people along the way that have been cabinet officials that weren't successors just because they didn't meet the definition. They weren't natural born citizens or what have you. So they were excluded as far as being a successor, if you will. Oh. Yeah. Anyway, I could go on about this for a while, but it gets into the weeds.
Oh, well, the nice thing about this, though, is we try to bring folks like yourself in because you're very versed in this, and it helps to educate our fellow truck drivers who are attempting to advocate for the industry, to give them some kind of insight and ideas about how things work within government, and also for you to promote yourself as well. I mean, like I said earlier, you did run before. I'm not sure if you're planning on running again or if you're just assessing matters, but
right, yeah. I mean, I could tell you that and always assessing a situation. I think that makes good sense. I'm looking at 2022. What makes sense. I've had people call me and ask me, "Hey, would you run for county mayor?" I've had a lot of people ask me to run here in my own county, run for county mayor. Or then I've had a lot of people that said, "Hey, why don't you run for a state rep seat?" We wanted you to run for state rep last time because I was going to run for Congress in 2020. Didn't work out to be able to put together a campaign because my mom had passed away. She was very sick for a number of months. But let me back up. 2019, over the summer, I did a exploratory committee where I went to D.C. and met with a lot of officials, a number of senators and members of the House, and different heads of a lot of these different organization PACs and so forth, just to try to raise money, or at the same time just to say, hey, when the incumbent announces he's not going to run again, would you support me? Would you endorse me? I had a lot of things that were kind of lined up, and some of them were on that strong maybe list. But he didn't announce in the August recess that he was going to retire. So fast forward to January, he decided he was going to announce at that point. But my mom was already sick at this point, so we had to round the clock care for her. So there was no way to put together a campaign or to even try to run. That to me that would be I'd be derelict in my duties as a son and just as a good human being to try to say, well, I'm going to go run a campaign now. See you later. She needed help just getting up off the toilet. So I'm not going to do that. So and I had a March, I think it was March March 7th, March 9th, whatever it was. I had a date picked out that I was going to do a fundraiser campaign announcement. Then, of course, I nixed that, but I already had everything kind of organized, and people were like, why don't you run for state rep? And I was like, okay, I'll pick up a petition to run for state rep and just see how it looks. But then, of course, this is during the time of COVID-19 that was hitting. We started to get all these lockdowns and shutdowns. I'm like, you know what? I can't in good conscience ask people to go knock doors or give me a dime if we don't know how long this thing's going to be around. So I decided, you know what? I'm not even going to file the petition. I gave everybody who donated money to me for whatever office, I gave their money back to them. People who donated to my exploratory committee for Congress, I donated their money back to them out of my own pocket. I said, you know what? If I'm not running for anything, I shouldn't keep your money. Even if a lot of people said, hey, we'll let you keep the money. I'm like, no, I shouldn't do that. Because in good conscience, it's not the right thing. You may need that money. I don't need the money. And if you look at the next election, maybe I'll ask you for a donation then, and you'll see, hey, I gave you that money back. Now donate it back to me this time around. Right. But we'll see.
Well, that makes sense. That's a logical approach. I thought a lot of people know when it comes to campaigning, when you get the money donated, you can carry that over, right, in your PAC for the next time you run.
Right. Yeah. So there's different situations. So if you have a PAC or if you just have a campaign committee, so there's different financial laws that apply. But yeah, so you can keep that money and use it for other campaigns. So if you didn't spend everything, you can use it. But if you're not going to become a candidate again, there's different rules that apply at that point as far as what you have to do with the money or what you can do with the money. Used to the law said that it become the personal money of the candidate or the member of Congress or whatever, and they would have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and some people even have millions of dollars in these accounts, and it was just became their personal finance. A lot of people didn't know that, and those laws have changed over the years, and they've gotten more strict, obviously, which they should. But you should use the money for what you say you're going to use it for campaigning, for what have you, and if you don't spend it all, I think you should have to either offer up everybody a prorated amount that's there. I think maybe that's part of the finance laws. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on that. But, or donate it to some sort of charity or something like that. I think it would be all right.
I was under the impression that I had to go to the DNC, the DNC or RNC, depending on what party you belong to. Sometimes when you talk about PAC funds and stuff, I think of Hillary. I don't know why.
Right,
but at any rate, I thought I had to, if you were dissolving and you were no longer running or in it, and you had residual money, I thought it went back to the committee or the DNC or RNC.
Like I said, I'm not some sort of election finance law expert or anything like that. But there's a lot of places you can go and find if you're running for federal office. You can go to the Federal Election Commission, read all their jargon that they have, read all their rules, and that's what you should do. Honestly, states have different rules as well. For state level candidates and local candidates, so in Tennessee, for example, there's certain finance laws you have to that apply to you if you're running as a state candidate and local candidate as well. There's some filing rules that apply. Like if you're running for county commission here in Tennessee, you have to file with your local county election commission as well. But if you're running for state office, you have to file with the state and so on. So there's rules that apply that kind of keep things a little transparent. But there's still, ways around all sorts of stuff, which is sad. And that's how we see a lot of people getting those, I always say the manila envelopes under the table, that happens all the time. And there's a lot of ways that goes down. It maybe not necessarily directly somebody giving you cash or whatever, but you see all these, the sweetheart deals of, the hookup for this or that, or a family member or something. There's always some insider deal that goes on in government, at various levels. Which is very sad. When we need more transparency and open, we need to get a lot of money out of politics, which doesn't bode well for me to ask certain organizations for money because they like having the sway, if you will. They like having that power over somebody, and money brings that.
Influence. They want to influence you with their funds.
Absolutely.
That's an unfortunate fact when it comes to campaign funds and stuff. Is
sure.
They do expect a return on their investment. I noticed.
Right.
I looked at your 2018 campaign. I looked that up not too long ago. I noticed you run a pretty streamlined campaign. It wasn't. You didn't. You did a good campaign on limited funds, or more or less limited spending, I should say.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to think about this. I announced it was September of 2017. My intentions to run, because I was under the impression that the incumbent was going to, retire after his fifth term, because he had promised that initially, and he promised that in a number of campaigns that he had ran. And I'm thinking, okay, he'll retire. He'll announce something, maybe around Christmas time, maybe in January. Never came to fruition. Anyway, I could go on about some other stuff that went on during that time frame. There's a reason why I didn't back out of the race at the same time whenever he announced he was going to run. But that's a side story I could tell you about some other time. But it's the dirty side of politics, if you will, that people started coming after me with. It's just pathetic stuff.
But the dirty side is what we want to know about. We want to know how this works and
right.
Get an idea. What is going on behind the scenes. We always
right.
talk about the money. We always talk about the influence, but we really don't see it firsthand. We don't really understand how it really operates. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's some twisting of arms at points in time. Some of the things we see now, you see a lot of it on Facebook where people are saying, Biden's bought by China.
Right,
Pelosi's bought by China. I've even heard people say that Pelosi's being run by the coyotes out of Mexico. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm not trying to spread any rumors, but
yeah. Well, you got to think. Pelosi's what in her 80s or something. I think nearly 80. She doesn't have all her faculties there, and I'm not making fun of somebody who's old. There's some older folks that are with it without a doubt. But she's definitely not what she was, many years ago. Whenever she was like being able to raise a lot of money for her party, which is really how she got where she's at, because she has the ability to go out and raise a lot of money. She has access to a lot of high dollar donors. So people basically owe her favors, and that's how she ended up becoming Speaker in the first place. So she knows what she's doing as far as playing the political game. I disagree with her probably on nearly every policy that she's ever supported in her career, or at least in the past several years anyway. Back whenever she first came to Congress, even when Joe Biden was in the Senate, back in the 80s and 90s, they were pretty much in line with a lot of what things that Republicans, agree with. I think Joe Biden, for example, was for, border security, immigration reform, legal immigration. He was for deporting people, that came into this country illegal. Now, all of a sudden, as president, it's like, where did that guy go to? You know what I mean? But of course, he doesn't have all his faculties at the same time either, which is very sad. But he, and this isn't some conspiracy theory, he's being controlled by somebody else who's telling him really essentially what to say. And you can see that. Anybody with half a brain knows this. And like I said, whenever I served at the White House, I was there for the most part during the Bush-Cheney days. But I was there for about 6-7 months of the Obama-Biden administration, the first year that they were in office. And I went to Chile with Vice President Biden on Air Force Two. And he came to the back of the plane. We refueled in Costa Rica, and he came to the back of the plane there where I was sitting and where other staff members were sitting, the Secret Service and so forth. And he's, passed me on the back, says, "Hey, how's it going? This and that, And, my name's Joe. I'm like, well, yes, sir. I know who you are. You're the vice president. I'm a vice presidential communications response officer at this time. I'm like, I know who you are, sir. And I said, you don't have to come back here and slap backs and campaign or anything like that. He's like, hell, I've been doing this since, I was in my 20s. He's like, I don't know how to turn it off. He's like, just the way I talk to people. And I said, no, I get that. He was a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. He was very cordial and professional to me. But he's not necessarily with it these days. You know what I mean? There's people telling him in his ear what he needs to say, what policy he's going to support and how he's going to support it. And at this point, he's at the end of his career regardless. So you're on your way out. So we don't need you to run in 4 more years. So we're going to use you up right now to get everything we possibly can while Democrats have the House, have the Senate, and have the executive branch with the presidency. They're going to push everything they possibly can, no matter how radical. Are they going to get some pushback? They will get pushback. Are they going to survive in the courts? Who knows? It's a 5-4 split. Five justices have been appointed by Republicans, 4 by Democrats. But with the Chief Justice being a wild card, you never know who he's going to vote for, which side he's going to vote for. You think about the Obama, what's it? The healthcare reform. We call it Obamacare. You think about that. He sided with the Democrats on that. Saying it was a tax, saying it was perfectly constitutional. And me, I'm not a constitutional scholar or anything like that, but I look at the merits of their case, and I'm like, this should be ruled unconstitutional right here. But finally, with when Trump got in office, with the tax bill that he pushed forward basically right away, it stripped out the individual mandate, which took the power of Obamacare. It lessened its power, if you will, which is a good thing. You know, we don't need the federal government having so much control and everything. Healthcare is one of those things.
Absolutely. I got Joe Barreto coming on the phone line. Right. By the way, I'm not even displaying the number. I'm losing it myself. I'm turning into a Biden here. I'm forgetting the simple things. But Joe, Joe's on the phone line. If anybody would like to call in and talk with Todd, you can call in at 551-241-6957. I'd also like to take a moment to address Frank G. Truck's question here. He asked if we're going to talk any trucking. We did talk trucking a bit earlier. What we're doing, Frank, is we bring folks like Todd in. Todd has some history and background in the White House, and he's given us a little bit, because a lot of us in trucking that watch this show advocate for trucking. And so this gives them an opportunity to learn a little bit about the political side of things so that they may grow in their advocacy and become better advocates. Right.
And, the thing is, whether it's trucking industry, whether it's in any other industry that you have, whatever it may be, you want a series of bowling alleys, just as an example, just being goofy here. It doesn't matter what the industry is. Going and lobbying Congress or the president, the vice president, whatever it may be, that's basically the same thing. You know what I mean? So that process, you can learn that from somebody who works in any industry. You may not necessarily, if I come from a different industry, let's say I come from construction, I may not understand, say, the trucking industry fully, but if I know how to go lobby somebody, I can teach you how to go lobby. You come with the expertise of the trucking industry behind that, and you fill in the blanks as far as that's concerned. But as far as lobbying somebody, you're talking to members of Congress, how to get a piece of legislation in front of a committee, or at least in front of a congressman that's willing to go take it to their committee and try to get something done with it. There's a full process that's at play there. And just talking to them with an open door policy, you're probably not going to get any sort of legislation. But if you're whether an organized organization here, and it doesn't have to be an official organization, but just a group of people that are willing to stand with one another in numbers. You've signed petitions, for example. A person who goes and lobbies on your behalf can say, well, I have 10,000 people here, and 5,000 of them from your district. I think you might want to listen to me on this. So and that's basically what they're saying without saying it, if you will. So whenever you go lobby somebody, it's strength in numbers, but the process doesn't matter regardless of what kind of industry you're going to go lobby about.
Now, a lot of when you were talking about businesses and stuff, it occurs to me that a lot of business owners, especially in the corporate level, pay attention to what's going on within the trucking industry because it affects their business. So they pay careful attention to it. So it's a centralized point, and so the here again, I'm losing my train of thought. But the question here is, what do you think's going on with autonomy? How do you think that's going to play in the future as things are growing? Do you think it's really going to become a thing, or is it going to get pushed back at some point in time due to the risk involved? Yeah,
you have to think about as far as a truck going out and driving itself. That's what we're talking about, right? I want to make sure that we're talking about the right thing here.
Well, you got fully autonomous, and you've got autonomous with a driver in it. And right now they're pushing for autonomous with a driver in it, but it looks like the end goal is to get fully autonomous.
You have to think about it. If the technology is not even there for that to be widespread, to be honest with you, I don't foresee something like that coming to bear for decades. And we always say, oh, the future is going to look like this or what have you. I know they're testing a lot of things, whether it's just in personally owned vehicles, what your daily driver. Even that has a lot of hiccups, has a lot of issues. And you're going to need a human being behind that wheel, no matter what. Because you think you're going to send a truck out on its own, and it's just going to get to point A to point B with no problems. I don't see it coming to bear anytime soon. So you're going to need somebody behind that wheel, even if the truck can drive on its own in certain situations, or say on an interstate or what have you. It may make things a little safer at times, perhaps. You take out some human error, but at the same time, a computer driving is only as good as the person who programmed it. You know what I'm saying? So a human being, for example, You have to imagine how the brain works. I mean, what you can see out there, and you've driven on the road many times. You're seeing things, a mile down the road. Oh, no, I need to start putting on the brakes now. I need to get ready right now. A computer may not necessarily process that or see that what you're seeing. It may just take in data from the cars that are just in front of it or what have you. So it may not be as good as a human being. It may be better. Who knows? But you're going to need a human being in that daggone driver's seat without a doubt. I truly believe that.
To answer Chris's question,
McKinley,
Mr. William Wyatt,
yes,
he's definitely from Tennessee. I think that stands out pretty good.
Yeah, I got the hat, got the flag.
Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
You know what they say? My mother always said I have a face for radio, so here I go. So I'm going to be on the phone answering and questioning. The Democratic Party, like you have pointed out, is going for their absolute full agenda.
Right.
And as you know, like in California, for instance, they push for what they call the AB 85 rule, which basically means reclassification of those under ICC authority from independent contractor status. They were able to successfully do that in the state of California. And of course, it put thousands and thousands of truck drivers basically out of work, even those that were leased on with either big major companies who gave them basically the pink slip. Legislation now has been introduced by the Democrats into the federal level to try to be able to reclassify those under ICC authority. And it's one of the things in which I don't understand why a lot of people are not outraged about, because there could be a definite reclassification. And I believe personally, what I come down to it is a war of independence for those who are independently contracted. Have you heard anything about this or have any feeling about this when it comes to reclassifying independent contractors from ICC authority?
You think about it. Truck drivers, for the most part, if you're an independent trucker, you're a small business owner. So why are you going to go force somebody, especially at the federal level? You're going to force somebody to, sign on and work for somebody else that you don't have any interest in working for. That's essentially what this is doing. So I don't believe in forcing anybody to do anything like that. In fact, I would rather see less regulation at the federal level anyway. I think regulatory agencies, whatever it may be, should have the power to go out and enforce law that's on the books that have been passed through a legislative body, which, at the federal level, it's Congress, signed by the president. I think regulatory agencies should have their teeth pulled in some respects whenever it comes to, say, passing a regulation that has the force of law. So you have these independent agencies, the regulatory agencies, if you will, that basically act as all three branches of government. They push a regulation. Then by the fact that they are the executive branch, they get to go out and enforce that regulation. And then essentially whenever they want to fine you, they can find you guilty and say, hey, here's your fine. Good luck with that. And to fight it in open court usually would cost you more than the fine was anyway. So people end up just paying the fine. So these agencies end up basically becoming they verify, or what am I trying to say here? Their existence is what I can't think of the daggone words. I'm having brain fart here too. But they validate their existence by going out and saying, see, look at how many things we've enforced, how many regulations we enforced, how much money we brought into the federal government or to our agency or our department or whatever. So I don't think regulatory agencies should have such authority to be able to do that. I think limited authority to go out and pass a regulation for a short term, but I think those regulations should have to expire after a short period of time. But it should give Congress enough time to pass legislation regarding something that you regulated on, or saying, well, it doesn't rise to the level of us passing any legislation. We'll let the regulation expire and be done with it. But there's too much power in these regulatory agencies. But the fact is, you have Congress for many decades have abdicated their role as legislators to the executive branch, because every election cycle they need a boogeyman. They need some way to be able to fundraise. They'll say, well, see this agency over here, this department or this president, they're bad. Give us money. So there's always that boogeyman that they can go fundraise on, and that's the sad part about all this stuff. But you think about this. Your organization's in the trucking industry. I'm a veteran. We have many veteran service organizations that go lobby Congress and state legislators and so forth. There's strengths in numbers of being members of those organizations that are powerful. So if you're, say, an independent trucker, it would behoove you to sign up for some of these organizations that go lobby on your behalf, especially if they're basically in line.
Oh. We froze up. But he's got a point there, JoJo, on in regard to how the regulatory agencies are working. I'm going to go ahead and remove him here because he's froze. If he comes back active again, we'll bring him back on. He'll probably have to pop out and come back in. But yeah, these regulatory agencies get out of hand.
McKinley, and I got to tell you, I mean, I think one of the things that realistically needs to be done, and which is the next question that I wanted to ask him about, and I think for a lot of our fellow, all those who are basically, whether if you're a liberal or even a conservative in any form or fashion, I think one of the major concerns is that there needs to be a major wake up in BC. I mean, I just went through a post that you went through, John, that you posted about an individual who's being charged among the threat of his own freedom of speech, and he. You know, I may not agree or align with what some of the things in which he basically was trying to really protest about, but at the same time, there are certain things in which I could agree with when it comes to the way how government in itself has gone beyond its overreach and its oligarchy type of thinking and its type of authoritarian type of thinking. And I think one of the things in which a lot of us really need to understand that if we think it's going to be either the Republican Party or if it's the Democratic Party that's going to realistically save the industry, well, the proof is right now just being shown by what the Democratic Party is realistically doing. They're trying to reclassify those who are out there who have worked ever so hard for your independent contractual business to redefine among your ICC authority in itself and to redefine among your classification like they did in California. And I know what everybody's going to say. Everybody's going to say that everything happens and starts in California. Well, it does in some cases, some. Like some people would say, like, you know, the 53-foot trailer rule, which is one with the Surface Transportation Act back in 1982. Well, unfortunately, California was the last state to adopt the 53-foot trailer rule. But here's the one problem that I think a lot of us don't seem to realistically get involved. They don't seem to want to interact among the process of the system in itself on how the oligarchy of the Democratic Party themselves are realistically trying to place war on independence, small business, trying to inhibit among the growth of an individual for either he or she to be able to obtain and keep what they realistically rightfully earn. And if this measure does not prove basically that point on what the Democratic Party and even some Republicans, which I'm sorry to say this, because I'm sorry, Todd, I'm a registered independent. Please bear with me, because that would be my question. I'm glad you're back on. Is do you believe that really the Republican Party needs to have a strong wake-up into true conservatism?
I'm thinking he froze up again, JoJo. I couldn't tell for a second there, but he did. He froze up. Oh, that's unfortunate. It's been a problem within the country. I've noticed Todd's been freezing up, and I'm pretty sure he's probably got pretty good internet. Guys out there that's been in the Midwest and such. Scott Reed was talking about things were freezing up here. I've seen Christy
I
Parsons
understand it
was
because I'm in
talking about it.
Texarkana right now, and you know my internet has just gone all shabbled up, and
Yeah.
for very good reason because I can see a lot of the suffering that's really going on firsthand.
Mhm.
You know, I traveled up, of course, through Louisiana up to the northern of the 49, and the 49 was absolutely shut down. And yeah, I'd made a little joke that I think Arkansas should probably teach northern Louisiana on how to plow, because as soon as I crossed over the state line on I-49, the roads were completely and absolutely clear. And kudos to Arkansas, by the way. Sad, of course, on northern Louisiana, on which either A, they don't have enough equipment, or they did not have enough salt, if they didn't have enough sand, if they were not prepared. Same goes for northern Texas. All of our prayers are basically for everybody in the northern hemisphere that met up with this, you know, tragic winter storm, because everybody thinks now when things are warming up, all the problems are going to be all over and done with. No, unfortunately, there's going to be a continuous power outage. There are need and call for plumbers out there big time to be able to help bring back water service. And I'm pretty sure that especially there's going to be some very serious need, you know, for food supply. And that's one of the things in which I give a lot of credit for Trucks for Rooms to Spare, that I'm sure they're going to be putting a lot of good initiative and effort. Fellow truck drivers who have a little bit of room in the back of their trucks, you can go on trucksforroomstospare.org, and if you've got a little bit of room and you're heading towards that direction or going by that direction, which I know some of you may not, and if you can afford to actually, you know, spare to put a little bit of room of a pallet of emergency supply of food to those who are suffering among northern Texas and Louisiana and Alabama especially, and Mississippi, you name it, in all those areas, do so, please, by every means. We really appreciate it. And I'm sorry, Todd, we got you back, and I don't know if you heard my question.
Yeah, I heard your question. I started talking, and I've had issues with my internet all day. The cable kept going in and out. If it goes out again, I'll just call in on the number. But yeah, I heard it. But what I suggest is, the fact is we have these regulatory agencies, and I don't know how much you heard, but regulatory agencies that have the power of basically all three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and judicial. So basically, they can act as legislators by passing a regulation that has the effect of law. They can act as the executive branch, which they are, and go out and enforce the laws or regulations, if you will. And at the same time, they can be the judicial branch by slapping a fine on you. That it makes more sense to just pay the fine versus trying to fight it in court, because it costs you way much more to fight it in court than the fine actually is. So basically, this has come about because legislators for years, members of Congress, House, Senate, they've abdicated their role as legislators to the executive branch to allow them to do this. So that way, every election cycle, they can point to these regulatory agencies. They can point to the president or whoever it may be. It's usually the faceless bureaucrats that they blame. Say, well, these are the bad guys. I'm going to go fight them for you. I'm going to fight on your behalf. I want to fight those faceless bureaucrats. They're the problem. But really, it's the legislators that are the problem, because they gave up their power to legislate to these executive branch agencies, because they like to be able to have a boogeyman so they can get reelected. And at the same time, they can fundraise off of it. They can fundraise off of, whatever the regulatory agency is, they're the bad guys. I'm going to go fight them for you. Give me money. And you see it all the time. There's always something that comes down, and next thing you know, you'll get an email if you've donated to campaigns in the past or whatever. You'll get an email saying, "Oh, we're fighting this issue. We're fighting this regulation. Send me money. I'm going to try to get it repealed. I'm going to try to get them stopped." And this is what they do. It's a game that they play, and this is how our politics have just gotten so out of control. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that people don't want to get involved in politics. People don't know how to do it, or they say, "Well, politics don't affect me." The fact is, politics affects you 100%. Everything that happens in Washington, D.C. affects everybody in this country and people in other countries at the same time, for the most part. Things that happen in your state legislature, that affects you just the same. I'm not saying you have to be a political expert or have even a policy niche, but just have an issue, have issues that you want to stand up for. Let's say if you're in a trucking industry, for example, there are probably organizations that go lobby members of Congress or your state legislature on your behalf. If that organization is in line with your beliefs, sign up. You say, well, I don't want to pay whatever the membership fee is. Well, guess what? They're fighting for you, and they're fighting to make sure that you as an independent trucker can continue to be an independent trucker, and you don't have to go work for some big organization. You can still be that small business owner, independent trucker. You're a small business owner, just the same as if you owned a butcher shop. Just the same. Different industry, different job altogether. Different things go into it, but at the same time, you're a small business owner trying to make a living for yourself and for your family. So look for organizations to join. I'm a veteran. I said this before I got cut off a minute ago. I joined a lot of veteran service organizations, like American Legion, for example, Disabled American Veterans, AMVETS, and many others. And they go lobby on my behalf as a veteran. They go lobby on the behalf of all sorts of other veterans. And by me joining, it gives strength in numbers. So you see a legislator, they go talk to a legislator, for example. Legislator sees American Legion walking in. Well, American Legion has 2.5, 3 million people. I should probably listen to what this person has to say versus dismissing them. An individual just strolls into my office for having open office hours, or corners me in my district and wants to talk to me about whatever it may be, whatever an industry it is. It's like it's going to go in one and out the other. But if you show up and say, "Hey, I represent 10,000 truckers," or I'm from this organization, that person's gonna be like, "Oh, let me talk to you. Let me not just try to blow you off or try to pawn you off on one of my staffers." So, there's things that you can do to have your voice heard, even if it's not you going there directly yourself. So look for different organizations to join that's fighting on your behalf. I think that's important. And that would go a long way, I believe.
A lot of our listeners.
Well, I have another question, though, in concern of gun rights, which you were talking about before.
Yes.
In the great state of Tennessee, that is now looking to actually make its move to become a concealed carry holding free state. In other words, am I correct on that?
Well, yeah, constitutional carry, and it's concealed carry, and it's also open carry as well. And in Tennessee, we have this. We have two different classifications as far as our concealed carry, open carry, whatever. But we're trying to be a constitutional carry state, so you don't have to pay the government for permission to carry your sidearm or whatever weapon it is you want to carry. And I think that's the way it should be. But in Tennessee, we're a red state through and through, just like our flag is, red. So we've had a supermajority of Republicans in the state house and state senate for a number of years now, and a number of governors in a row that have been Republican. And for whatever reason, we haven't got constitutional carry done yet. But every election cycle, you always see a few state legislators across the state saying, "Well, I'm going to go fight for the Second Amendment, and I'm going to put another bill in, yet again." And it's like, I don't understand how it's not gotten done to this point. But we got a state legislator now. He was on Fox News yesterday. A guy named Scotty Campbell. He's got a bill that has a good chance of getting passed. And the Tennessee Firearms Association, which I'm a life member of, there was an article yesterday that I read that said they're saying that the legislation doesn't go far enough. I'm like, well, let's get something passed and get us on the path to true constitutional carry. And then let's go back and fix it after the fact. But let's get something that makes sense passed now and get it out of the way. But in Tennessee, I don't understand how we're not already a constitutional carry. Go ahead.
Why do they feel that why it's not strong enough, in other words? Because the only pushback that I'm going to realistically see, because there's been many constitutional carries, for instance, in the federal level that was introduced, and unfortunately one particular area in your state, which happens to be Memphis, Tennessee, happens to be very troubling when it came to that. But actually, the mayor of Memphis, Tennessee, actually signed affidavit of actually against any type of measure of actual open or any type of constitutional carry. So how is that going to follow or flow in Memphis, for instance?
Yeah. So, if it's a state law, you're not going to be able to trump the state law. Local law cannot trump state law, just like state law can't trump the federal law.
But,
there's the hierarchy there.
A state can nullify federal law, like Colorado did.
There is a process for that. Correct.
And
But local governments cannot nullify a state law.
Oh, they cannot.
Yeah, I don't know that in our state constitution that it allows for something like that. But there's certain ordinances you can put in place, obviously. But a local business can say, "Well, I don't want anybody to carry a weapon in my store." Sure, okay, that you have every right to do that, and I respect that right. And I have every right not to shop in your store at the same time, or shop in your store and respect your rule. Just the same.
Absolutely,
I can agree with that.
Now, are you familiar with the suspension clause in the Constitution? Due to insurrection and rebellion, and could you define that for us? I read that, and what I get is it's referring to insurgency and rebellion, or insurrection and rebellion. And at that point in time, it says for the public interest.
Yeah.
So,
you're talking about suspending habeas corpus, right?
Yes. And to me, that means we're talking about insurrection and rebellion. However, when we're talking about loss of gun rights, because in the Second Amendment, and this is a sensitive issue for me because it ticks me off every time. In the Second Amendment, it says shall not be infringed.
Right. Period.
Infringe means to be restricted by any means.
Right.
And so you always hear this, well, for public interest, we're going to have to taper back on gun rights. For public interest, you're now going to have a driver's license. For public interest, you have to have an ELD in your truck. They always use this thing for public interest. And it's the only place I can see in the Constitution where it says anything about public interest, and it's not a blanket coverage.
Right. No, exactly. It says shall not be infringed, and that's it. And it's a to the point amendment. You look at other amendments, that are a paragraph long or whatever. The Second Amendment is probably one of the shortest amendments that it's direct to the point. And it says what it says, and people try to parse that out. I'm like, I don't know how you can really parse out the meaning of shall not be infringed. I don't understand how you could parse that out or try to find loopholes in that. To me, there's no loophole there.
And the whole thing about the Bill of Rights, that was an afterthought. That was the final establishment of the Constitution, where they said, wait a minute, we have to establish something here to make sure the individual's rights, not people as a whole, but the individual's rights are protected. You as an individual. Right. So if Yahoo Serious goes out there and creates havoc with a gun, it doesn't mean I lose my rights. It means he loses his rights. Absolutely,
yeah, and that's the way it should be. You think about it. They define what the government is basically with the first articles. You know what I mean? what the legislative branch is, and they define how it's set up, how you elect people, whatever, Article 2, Article 3, so on and so forth. But, they're like, where are the rights here? We need to have some sort of, and that is the last thing that they put in there, which makes good sense. And then, of course, they talked about, the freedom of speech and all that, freedom of religion, freedom to associate. The First Amendment, most without a doubt, probably the most important amendment. And then, of course, the Second Amendment, there's a reason why it's number 2, because it has the First Amendment's back. And you should have that. You know what I mean? You should have that right to be able to defend yourself, defend your community, your family, your business, whatever it may be. Or at the same time, just the fact that if I'm a bad guy and I know that if I go to this area over here, there's probably 30 or 40 people that have a gun, I probably don't want to do anything here. So it does deter people from doing things. Whether or not you could sit there and quantify it or not, it certainly does deter people in some respect, in some manner or another.
Absolutely. Oh, let's see, what was it? Seems like a Buttigieg.
Buttigieg. Yeah.
I'm not saying that right,
but I won't say what I call him.
Oh. So, what do you think? Where are we at with Buttigieg? Do you think we're screwed, blued, and tattooed all the way over, or do you think that we may actually have a chance to reason with this guy?
He's a smart guy. Don't get me wrong. He is a very smart guy. I won't say, well, he's an idiot. No, he's a very smart guy. He knew what the heck he was doing by running for president. But he checked a lot of boxes for the left. He's a gay guy. He's very liberal. And at the same time, what he did whenever he ran for president, if you pay attention to this stuff, he went to the far left as he could go. He's like, well, this is an area that, people are going to. There's a lot of voters over here. Whenever he realized that, well, there's probably not enough voters over here, Bernie Sanders has all these guys rounded up. So he moved back more toward the middle. So he went from starting off on the left, moved back to the middle, more where Joe Biden was supposedly at. So he played that card right. And he knew that he's like, I'm not going to win the presidency, but I'm going to be able to get my name out there, probably get a cabinet position, or set myself up for a U.S. Senate run in the next couple of years. So he played that card without a doubt, the best he could. Anyway, Buttigieg has no experience in transportation or anything like that. He's educated without a doubt, was in the military, but has no experience within transportation policy. But does that matter necessarily? Probably not. But at the same time, he's an ideologue. This is the key point. No experience in transportation, that's fine. He's an ideologue. So he thinks ideologically. So you say you want to go reason with him. He doesn't listen to reason. He doesn't listen to facts. He doesn't listen to anything conservative, especially, or anything that makes sense as far as, free Americans that want to exercise their liberty. He's all about forcing more people under the control of a government institution, a government organization. And in order to do that, what do you have to do? You got to get rid of the independent truckers, force them to work for these bigger companies who are going to do what? They're going to abide what the big government has to say, because they want to continue to exist. So that's just how they end up controlling more and more people, by forcing small business owners, independent truckers in this case, out of business, force them to work for these big companies that are going to adhere in lockstep what regulatory agencies have to say, what Department of Transportation has to say, what the Democrats in Washington have to say, just because they want to continue to exist and make their money, especially the big cheese at the top of these organizations.
Chris Wyatt's cracking me up with this comment. Joe can't see him, I don't think. He called him Buddha. What is Secretary Bucket? I don't think Chris has a strong opinion of Mr. Buttigieg.
Yeah, no.
I don't have any issue realistically. I don't have any issue realistically with his personal orientation, to be honest.
No, it has nothing to do with anything.
I don't really care.
Exactly.
I have no care about that. The thing that I have to care about, to be honest with you, is the limited amount of experience or no experience whatsoever in transportation or even infrastructure or anything that has the concerns among transportation in itself. And it's like you said, Todd, I agree 100%, because he basically positioned himself realistically to file for either a Senate seat or to become a cabinet post. And he got his cabinet post. Now the real question is going to be is the type of action he's going to take. And like you just said right there, which does worry me, is to try to push more independent contract drivers or independent, authority-owned drivers into going into mega carriers, in which we are seeing more and more and more of year after year. Right. And that's one of the things in which I've stressed that where it's coming down to it is a war of absolute true independence. And I'm not talking about independence with their own authorities. I'm talking about even independents who are lease-on operators, who are just even generally owner-operators that are leased onto the bigger companies, to the bigger mega carriers, because this reclassification measure that was reported by Transportation Nation, which I can only appreciate, they're a good news outlet,
Right.
Basically puts a lot of fear on those who are among independents, and I think that's where the government realistically lies on. They want to basically threaten among independents. They were successful in doing it in California, the so-called utopian state, which so many people say, well, it's so great in California. Well, why are there so many businesses and so many people leaving the state of California in droves?
Right.
Because they have no freedom.
You
They
know,
want to
places
put
like
the war among
go ahead.
independent-minded thinking away.
Yeah, in places like California, for example, that have just supermajority Democrat, and even New York, for example, they know they can inflict their will on people and see what they can get away with. And then, of course, what will end up happening is Democrats at the federal level will say, "Well, we got away with it here at the state level. Now let's push it at the federal level. You know, you got away with it in California. Let's do it here in Washington D.C. and inflict the rest of the people on it." And you have to think about this. You know, the left, by and large, and I'm excluding some people who are just left of center. There's some moderate liberals and Democrats that are out there, but there's a lot of extreme leftists, if you will. These are people that adhere to Marxism. That, you know, no matter what, Marxism is right. The ideology is right. It's always somebody else is to blame. Why it's always been a failure. Well, this is the reason it was a failure. This is the reason. You know, the reality is the ideology is flawed, destructive, and evil. You should never adhere to any ideology, no matter what it is. You should adhere to facts and reason first and foremost before you adhere to any sort of ideology. You know, I adhere essentially to conservatism and kind of a libertarian, a conservatarian type of ideology, because they take fact and reason as the base of their ideology, not the ideology itself, and especially not the heavy hand of government or some sort of organization that says you will comply, or essentially men and women with guns will come and force you to comply. You know, good ideas don't need force behind it. So, you know, if you have a good idea, like, you know, say, allow men and women that are in the trucking industry to basically do as they please and run themselves as they see fit, for the most part. I mean, as long as you're not out there, you know, you're not running human trafficking, you're not doing drug smuggling, and you're not speeding or driving recklessly on the road. You know, you're not drunk or whatever. Pretty much run your business the way you see fit, the way I look at it. You know, that's in a nutshell.
Well, you know, the thing we deal with in trucking is they got a broken hours of service rules required you to use the ELD to be in compliance with that broken. You probably heard this one before.
Mm-hmm.
And then turn around and announce that the hours of service rules are broken. And it's like, wait a minute, you put the cart before the horse once again. It's like we were talking about the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act earlier.
Right.
And they put the cart before the horse when it comes to people being able to afford the stuff. You know, they
Right.
compounded the insurance so bad that you couldn't afford to do it. You know, you had a $12,000 deductible, plus it was going to cost you another $12,000 and dues, and it was incredible. You know,
and in your industry, for example, if I make it harder for you to be able to be an independent trucker, what are you going to end up doing? You're going to say, especially if you're not old enough to retire, you're going to say, you know what? I'm going to stop being an independent trucker. These guys are hiring over here. They're not paying what I'm making every year, but I don't have to pay any overhead. So I'm going to go work for these big companies. And that's why they do a lot of this stuff. I mean, there's motives behind it. I'm not saying there's some sort of conspiracy theory or anything like that. This isn't grassy knoll type stuff. This is just factual things that are actually going on. It's like, how do you force people to do what you want them to do without them thinking that you're forcing them to do this? You know what I mean? They come to the decision on their own.
A lot of it, what comes down to is cheap labor. But I think what you're referring
true.
to here, not being grassy knoll, but you got the American Trucking Associations who represent the large carriers. The large carriers would much rather have you lease your trucks on with them and have control over you and make money off from you. And at the same time, the FMCSA looks at it and says, you know, if everybody leased their trucks on with the large carriers would do our job for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And they could be the bad guys.
They're not necessarily doing that job because they're cutting the corners too much on the training procedures. They're not necessarily even training any drivers out there on what even the split-hour rule of service could realistically do for them. They're not training the drivers on what even personal conveyance could realistically do for them. They're not even training drivers on how to even become so-called successfully profitable, because they have their own platforms and their own programs, unfortunately, that they just seem to want to have people follow in droves into. You either work for a company that pays you either by the mile or that pays you by the percentage. Some people prefer the percentage. What they don't understand is you have somebody else negotiating your percentage. When you don't even look at your own contracts and you see that you're even signing away your actual right of transparency away from what you're supposed to be doing, when you should have the right of transparency, then that's one of the points in which we try to really stress about as well. What aggravates me, and I'm sorry to say, I mean no offense, is I believe personally there needs to be a rude awakening and shakeup among true conservatives and constitutionalists in D.C. in itself. And I'm falling short among finding if there's many or any Republicans that are realistically left in office that are finding among guiding that light of true conservative constitutionalism. Right. The thing that I really have a big burning bush about, to be honest with you, and I said it like that, I'm sorry, but I believe personally the only way to make the rude awakening with a democratically controlled Congress, and unfortunately somewhat of a democratically controlled Senate, and now a presidency, is to go right in and present the Convention Among States.
Yes, Convention of States. Perfect. There you go. I love that organization.
Yes. What do you feel personally about that?
No, I agree with you 100%. That needs to happen. I encourage state legislators across the country to pick that up and basically support that group and to support what they're trying to do. It makes perfect sense to me. Term limits is a big issue there. We need term limits in Washington D.C. People say, "Oh, we have term limits. It's called elections." Essentially, whenever you have mountains of money and any number of people who can come and stump for you and endorse you, and the fact that people either don't vote or don't pay attention to politics and just vote for the name that they've heard of, it's hard to get really good people involved in politics. So, in order to get this system reformed, it's not going to take just a bunch of rules, regulations, or legislation at any level. It's going to take people getting active at the local level as individuals. Even though you don't have to be an expert on the Constitution, you don't have to be an expert on politics, you don't have to be an expert on the ins and outs of the party politics. Just know that you have issues that you hold dear, and you want to see those those things either addressed, or you want to see certain rights to continue to flourish the rest of your life and the rest of your life of your kids and grandkids and so on. You want America to continue to be a prosperous nation where people can realize the American dream. You have to be involved in ensuring that's the case. Just yelling at a politician every time they come around and asking you for your vote or do a town hall, that does nothing. You need to be involved in your local party to ensure that you're recruiting good candidates and at the same time going out and educating your neighbors of why they should vote for this person or another person. And at the same time, going out and recruiting people yourself that you think that would be a good representative at any level and saying, hey, would you be one to run for this office? We will support you. We will donate to your campaign. We will volunteer for your campaign. So it's not enough to say, oh, yeah, well, I may or may not vote. You need to recruit good people. You need to donate to their campaigns. And at the same time, go out and advocate for them. Knock on doors for them. Call your neighbors. Get on social media. This is how you end up winning. This is how you get those horrible incumbents out of office. And if not, it's just going to be the same old people running for the reelection every 2 years until they decide to leave office or go, make more money elsewhere or run for a higher office. And that's really what we have. We have a political class in this country that look down their noses at everybody else because they think that they're better than everybody. They make all the rules. Rules don't apply to them. They're pretty much safe because no one's ever going to run against them. And they have all the money on their side. And at the same time, they have any number of people who will come and stump for them, like I said. So get involved at the local level in some way and make your voice heard. Make sure your local party leaders, make sure your local representatives, your county commissioners, city aldermen, whatever it may be, county town commissioners or whatever you call them in wherever you live around this country. Make sure they know who you are and make sure you know who they are. Show up every now and then at a county commission meeting, have your voice heard. Let them know that you're paying attention to the issues and, let them know of the issues that you hold dear and what you want them to do about it. And I always say this, if you go to a rulemaker, a legislator, county commissioner, state rep, a senator, whatever it may be, whatever level, if you bring a problem to them, also I say bring a solution because a lot of times you say, you hear people say they ought to do this, the government ought to do something. Well, most of the time that when the government actually tries to solve a problem that you have, they're going to apply their own solution. And a lot of times it doesn't even address the issue, the original issue. And it creates several other issues in the long run that the government, are only big enough to fix. Healthcare. Why did they take over healthcare? Knowing that it was going to create all these problems. Well, he creates all these problems that only they can fix. So that's part of our problem right there. Nobody's involved. People think politics doesn't affect them. It actually absolutely does.
They guarantee their own value. But Frank G. Trucks had a point about focusing on the multitude of things that we can agree upon as opposed to the device rhetoric. And that is an issue within not just trucking, but society in general. Sometimes I think some of these politicians have been listening to us truck drivers fight about our own issues. Yeah. Well, I about choked when Biden said unity. That was it for me. I'm like, what is this? Is he a truck driver? What happened? What'd I miss? But Frank's got a point, it's a matter of getting into good dialogue, creating good dialogue, getting focused in on the issues and getting to agreements in some sort on the issues. So when you go forward, and as you said, criticism does no good without a solution. Bring your solutions forward as a collective whole. Something we've been trying to work on here within the trucking industry. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's worth the effort.
But it's like we talked about the Second Amendment a minute ago, Tennessee becoming a constitutional carry state. One piece of legislation may not be perfect, but let's not quabble over how imperfect it is. If it's good, let's push it forward and get it passed. We can always fix some things later on, or add to it later on. But if it's good, let's move forward with it. You may not get 100% of what you want. You may get 70 or 80%.
We commonly see that. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, because realistically, to have more and more constitutionally carried states is one of the great things that we can realistically move forward on, because we know that there's actually a true Second Amendment agenda that they're going to try to do whatever they can to infringe. And a lot of people do not understand, which the first thing that they always come up with, which I have a 2A group in which I get involved with a lot, is, well, if they try to take my firearms away, then that's the time when it's going to become war, or I'm going to have my guns and hide it in the time capsule in the backyard or something like that. The ATF had recently tried to be able to place guidance under the ATF, and they tried to open it for public comment. There are 1.5 million gun owners in the United States. There's over 3 million firearms in the United States. You would figure that if they're trying to be able to implement new guidance rules against the SBR system, where originally the ATF said, nope, it's all good, it's all fine, there's nothing that they can see, and then all of a sudden they want to place new re-guidance, not to take it away, but to place new guidance against the SBRs. And you would think that out of 1.5 million gun owners that there are in the United States, that they would get involved in the public comment process. Me and John actually looked into the ATF and seen how many public comments were actually only made, and there were only about 6,000. 6,000 public comments out of 1.5 million in the United States of gun owners out there. And not all of those public comments under the ATF are necessarily for or against, because it could be 3,000 against it, or it could be 2,000 or 4,000 for it. And this is some of the things in which I think a lot of people really need to be enlightened about. Some people have made the comment under the 2A group that I have, saying, well, better not to let them know what you have, or don't even post any type of firearms. I say that, hell with that, personally. I am a proud multi-firearm owner of ARs, AKs, of any type. I proudly carry wherever I can legally and absolutely carry at. And I think it's about time that we should be proud firearm holders and show how proud we are, not only to the government and who we are, but because that is the way how the system they've tried to degenerate those out there who have a firearm. And I think it's one of the things in which many of us should be just saying, no, I'm a proud, and I've had firearms all my life. I am second, third, or fourth generation firearm holder, and I will always be a proud firearm. And I hope that my next generation will be able to hold a firearm the same way as I would. And I think it's about time that we should be proud of that.
No, I agree with you 1,000%. You shouldn't have to hide, that you're, gun owner or whatever. But you were saying 1.5 million. I think it's a lot more than that, though.
I was going to question him on that one. 1.5 million gun owners sounds awfully light for 325 million Americans.
150 million firearm owners. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's probably more like 150 million people. Yeah, correct. Yeah. I didn't want to correct you in the middle of your statement because it was a good statement. Yeah, but you shouldn't have to hide, that you own a gun or not. But I always say don't advertise because you on social media, especially because you don't want people to know what you have in your house. I mean, if you have, let's say you invest in gold and you say, well, I keep my gold in my safe at my house. Well, now the bad guy who wants to rob you knows where your gold's at. It's just one of those things that I don't advertise, but not out of fear of the government. I mean, the government's always a threat. I mean, they've been a threat since the beginning of time. But I think government is a necessary evil to some degree. I think we need to have some sort of government, at the federal level. I think it should be as basic as possible and fit within the confines of the Constitution. Provide for the common defense, conduct diplomacy, be the arbiter between the states, and just a few of the other things that the Constitution allows it to do, and nothing more. But the fact is, people say, well, politics doesn't affect me. I don't like politics. I don't understand it. I don't vote, blah, blah, blah. And this is how you end up getting rules, regulations, legislation that infringes on the Constitution. And, nothing's ever going to be done about it because guess what? You don't even know what the Constitution says anyway. You're not involved in politics because, again, politics doesn't affect you. So, so people need to realize that it absolutely does affect you. And whenever a piece of legislation comes up that infringes on the Constitution, how would you know? You know what I mean? If you're not involved in politics, if you don't have a basic understanding of the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights.
The problem is in this democracy is we're conflicted because we have our Constitution and we expect to be free men and women of natural law within the Constitution.
Right.
But what we're dealing with is social contracts. And that's what the PPACA was a social contract, and so for the welfare of the people or the country.
Right.
And with these social contracts, this is where they start saying, "Well, you're going to have to give up a little bit of your freedoms for this."
No,
and I don't agree with that. I think that's complete and total BS.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And they say, "Well, it's for the greater good." And like, my gun's not going to kill anybody unless I need to kill somebody. I'm not going to go murder anybody with my gun. That's for sure. So my gun's never going to be involved in a crime unless for some reason I sell my gun to or trade it at a gun store and it's used sometime down the road. But at that point, it's not my gun. My gun by me or anybody in my family who would have access to it, which is basically myself and that's it, isn't going to go out and commit a crime. So to say that, well, I need to I'll give up my gun, for the greater good. I mean, it makes no sense. Now I can't defend myself. I have no way to defend myself outside of what my two fists can do. Which I'm not a big guy, so probably not a lot, especially if I'm fighting 2 or 3 people. So the gun is the great equalizer. Sam Colt basically made men equal, if you will.
Absolutely agree with that. Well, Todd, you were mentioning before during the time of your 2018 election. That I recall in the district in which you were running for, one of the most imperiled things that you had gone through was voter participation.
Right.
And how can we actually move ourselves forward? And that's not just in your area; it's in a lot of areas because really only not even 50% of among the majority of the American people really go out even to vote, even on a presidential election side. So what is the best way to? I've asked this to many politicians who have been on. How do we reach out to those in order to be able to get out and vote?
Right. And like I said, it takes you to get involved again at the local level, especially a local political party. And I mentioned before we went on air here, March 25th, we have a county reorganization for the Republican Party in Sullivan County, Tennessee. And I've already filed my memo with the nominating committee to run as chairman of the party. And here's one thing I plan on doing, or a few things I plan on doing. I plan on trying to have at least a quarterly, if not a monthly, membership drive. And of course, I plan on going out into the community and talking to different groups in an official capacity as chairman, whether it's a civic group or what have you. Even if it's a civic group that's apolitical, just to say, hey, this is who I am, this is who we are. If you're interested in discussing things, your organization is right in line with what Republicans believe in, what conservatives believe in. We'd love to have you as a member and come get involved. And this is how you engage with people in the community. And at the same time, discussing why and how it's so important to vote and to do just a little bit of research on the candidates that you're going to go vote for. A lot of times you have people go and they vote, well, I've heard this person's name or I've seen a lot of their signs, so they must be good, so I'm going to vote for them. Well, they may have voted on a number of pieces of legislation while in office that go contrary to what you believe in as a human being, but you know their name, so you're going to vote for them. So, being active locally gives you all the insight of who's who they are, what kind of person they are, what kind of side deals, backroom deals that they're doing. And it allows you to see things that you don't see just as an everyday person. So that's why it's very important to be involved in your local party and involved politically. So, and to say politics doesn't affect you, you look at the southern border, for example. Politics absolutely affects you, and the fact that there's going to be 20 million people streaming into this country over the next couple of years or over the next year, and they're going to be given basically amnesty right away and put on a expedited pathway to citizenship, which will essentially ensure that your country is going to cease to exist at this point. Why aren't they looking out for the millions of homeless Americans that are in this country? Oh, well, guess what? They don't have money and they don't vote, so I don't need them. But new people coming in, I put them on the government dime or whatever it may be, and they're going to vote for me for the next several decades. So that's what they're worried about. We need to worry about our homeless people. We need to worry about our veterans. We need to worry about everyday American people, the small business owners who are losing businesses left and right, especially during all these daggone lockdowns that are ridiculous. And put people in this country back to work. And if we look to Washington, D.C., or even Nashville, I'm here in Tennessee, that's our state capital. If you look to Nashville for have all the answers to solve your problems, you're looking in the wrong damn place. You need to look at yourself, and you need to look at what can I do? What can I do for my country? How can I have a difference? And it's about being active, being involved, and engaging with people who are like-minded as you. Joining organizations that like the Convention of States, for example, is one of them. Joining organizations that advocate for certain things, like Tennessee Firearms Association here in Tennessee. There's several gun owners organizations at the national level. You don't have to just join the NRA. There's Gun Owners of America, the GOA, great organization. I'm a life member of that. Join organizations like this who are fighting on your behalf. If you're a veteran, join veterans organizations. If you're a trucker, there's probably organizations that are in line with your beliefs that you can join who go out and fight for you. And by putting your name on the line, you're another number that they can say this is how many members we have. Versus them going up there and saying, oh, well, we only got 1,000 members or 10,000 members. No, we have a daggone 500,000 members, and you probably want to take us serious. This is how you get things done instead of saying, oh, well, it's a lost cause. No, it's not. It's only a lost cause if you allow it to be a lost cause. And, this is how we have such radical people in government as it is who despise people who want liberty and freedom. This is because people, for the most part, say, I'd rather just be left alone. Well, they're not going to leave you alone. Be very clear on that. They're not going to leave you alone. The leftist ideology that's coming through right now with the squad that's taking over the Democrat Party, they're not going to leave you alone. They want to control you. They want to have a say in everything that you do, every aspect of your life, whatever it is. And if you think that you're putting your head in the sand or just staying at home on election day or not being involved in because you think it doesn't matter, it doesn't count, you're part of the problem.
It's
well, Todd,
interesting.
I definitely want to be up in your neck of the woods anytime and do some good hunting out over there because I'm looking for some land actually over there, and I got a 6.5 Grendel ready to go, so I'm proud to show off what I have.
Yeah, you'll be all right up here. Come on up. I got some places we'll take you to shoot. I need to get out and shoot myself. So and hell, if you shoot bow and arrow, I got some people who go bow hunting too.
Excellent.
Now going back to what you said, it's interesting that you say that because there's been plenty of people that got involved into politics that started out as community organizers.
Right.
Nancy Pelosi did.
Right.
Barack Obama did. That's the left. But going to the right, Sarah Palin did.
Right.
She didn't start on anything big, and she ended up becoming the governor of Alaska. It's amazing how quick people can learn once they get involved. And I think what's happening a lot is people are living in hopelessness. When they live in hopelessness, they retreat back into their shell. Instead of coming out fighting, they want to retreat and figure out how they're going to survive. That's the worst case or worst action you can take in these sorts of circumstances. Yeah,
and here's the thing. I always talk about the bully in middle school or elementary school. How is the bully so powerful? You think about it. The bully's outnumbered. But the bully is so powerful because people say, well, I don't want the bully to call me a name, so I won't stand up and say anything. So, by not standing up and saying anything, it only strengthens and emboldens the bully. And this is really where the Democrats are nowadays. They played identity politics for many years. You had Republicans and conservatives who said, well, I don't want them to call me a name. They would say, well, you're racist. And racism was one of the things that they would throw out there. First off, it was, or you're just for the rich. It was class warfare. And then it morphed into identity politics with, you're racist. And now it's a homophobe, xenophobe, transphobe, whatever they create. You know what I mean? Nowadays, you're always some.
I'm a pretty proud capitalist I'm a pretty proud capitalist, and I have no problem when it comes to greed among capitalism at all. I have very free among my hand up in the air for it, and I wish to God that I would have had some investment into GameStop right now, but that's unfortunate right there. So, sorry, I had to put that in there.
Right, but let me finish this point. Identity politics works because people said, well, I don't want them to call me this, so I just won't step in and take up for this person who's getting attacked right now. And the next thing you know, this person, they crush this person, and they're no longer a threat. They get unelected. They're out of office. And then it's the next person. And now it's everybody on the whole because they saw that this works. So if something works, why would they change their strategy or their tactics? They know that by them calling you a racist or a homophobe or whatever, they know it's not true. A lot of them know it's not true, but a lot of them actually are ideological thinkers, so they think it is true. But there's a lot of them, especially some of the older people, they know it's not true, but they know it works as a political tactic. So the way we defeat that is we stand up against them, push back, and show them how it's not true. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We don't have to say, well, I don't want them to call me a name. I'm going to retreat. No, that's how they've gotten to this point. By people that wanted to retreat and go home and not be involved in politics, or, oh, well, it's just broke. It's never going to be fixed. Only thing I can do is just go to work, pay my taxes, and which are going to keep going up and up and up. Pay for a government that doesn't benefit you in the least. Anyway, I could keep going and going.
Yeah, right. So. We got to say hello to Dina. She says hello there. So hi back to you.
Hey.
I had a thought and I lost it.
We got a little bit of a break coming up too, by the way, because we're coming up to that 1 hour.
Oh, we're past that. We're almost at the hour and a half mark.
Hour and a half.
We're just getting right into it. I thought about it a couple of times about taking a break and then getting back into it. You know what? We could probably, because I do have an ad to play, and I like to play it at least once a show. Get it out there a little bit. It's for a good event going on in Ohio. So let me go ahead and play that, and we'll be right back with Todd McKinley. I think.
Break 19. Go ahead, break. Well, thank you, driver. Let me tell you about OATS. That's the Outrageous American Truck Show at the Holmes County Fairgrounds at Harvest Ridge in beautiful Millersburg, Ohio. This event is happening July 8th through the 11th of 2021. This is not your typical truck show. We are featuring semi-truck pulls, bull riding, 2 days and nights of concerts, comedians, bridal works, a beer garden, and vendors. Of course, we will be having a Sunday church service. This will be the single greatest truck show that you will ever attend in trucking. Tickets come in 1-day passes, 2-day passes, and 4-day passes. Booths are available to vendors. To order your tickets, visit us at oats2021.com. That's OATS2021.com. You won't want to miss this event. Visit the site at oats2021.com and get your tickets today.
That was Painless, and we're back here with Todd McKinley. Todd, I was curious what you think about how things are going to change with Biden in office now with treaties and or trade agreements, and how it's going to affect trucking, how it's going to affect the economy as a whole, or our society.
Yep. So, we Trump. He got us out of NAFTA, which was a disaster. Which basically ensured that other countries got the better end of the deal. I think with the USMCA, basically ensure that there was free, fair, and openness with regards to our trade. It brought more money into the country, increased trade, and it also helped the small business owners at the same time. But now with Biden, I don't know. I don't foresee him doing anything that's going to benefit the U.S. in any respect. Yesterday, he was out talking about China, and he was talking about, we have to realize, and he was talking about, I guess they were doing some human rights issues. He's like, well, we have to, basically allow, these countries, this is the way that they operate. We have to kind of look the other way, turn a blind eye. And you have countries that for years, and Trump pointed this out, obviously, in 2016, and since then, they have been ripping us off for years, getting away with basically proverbially murder. NATO, for example, you had countries that had signed treaties saying, oh, well, we'll pay X amount on our own defense. But the reality is they weren't doing that. And the U.S. was continuing to throw in more and more money to defend these other countries. So we would live up to our end of the bargain, but not these other countries. And so he's going to ensure that other countries don't have to live up to their end of the bargain. And they're basically going to rob us blind. And how jobs and manufacturing and all sorts of industry went to all these other countries decades ago is because of policies that like he supports. If you're for free, fair, and open trade, and for American citizens, I want to say America first. If you're for American citizens, as you should be as president, you should want to ensure that everything is on the up and up above board, and that we're not getting the short end of the stick. Maybe we're not getting the better end. Maybe the other side's not getting the better. Maybe it's even on par. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you have to ensure that they're going to live up to their end of the bargain. And if they don't, what's the downside for them for not doing that? And a lot of it is the carrot and sticks, or big stick diplomacy, whatever you want to call it. The Republicans for years have always put sanctions in place against these countries, and of course Biden, he wouldn't do anything like that at all. So you're going to see them; they're going to break treaties, or they're going to basically ignore the treaties that they've already signed, in order to benefit themselves or their own companies. And you may end up seeing American companies go to these other countries because, well, shoot, they're not going to enforce safety regulations, or they're not going to enforce labor laws or anything like that. So I can go send my factory over there, and for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and rake in the cash left and right, put it in some offshore bank account or whatever it may be, and do fairly well for myself. American workers be damned. So these are the downfall of electing somebody like this is he's not going to enforce any trade agreements that are already on the books that benefit Americans and also probably benefit these other countries at the same time. He's going to make sure that it's a one-sided affair here where the other country benefits and Americans and American workers lose out, essentially.
So you think they're trying to level the playing field globally? So instead of bringing everybody up to a first world nation, let's just bring the United States of America and other first world nations down to a third world level.
Yes, basically that's what it. And the whole new notion is of equity, quote unquote equity. That's basically ensuring outcomes are the same. Never mind about equal opportunity, where everybody has the right to participate, to try their best, if you will. It doesn't matter how good you are, how hard you work, whatever it may be. You're never going to be able to achieve your dream any easier than this person over here who just sits on the sidelines is going to achieve their dream because for whatever reason over here that they're not able to go to try to achieve their dream. But we're going to make sure that we give it to them. That's what equity is. People confuse it with equality, and so it's not the same thing. People should have every right to try their best to try to achieve their American dream. If they fall down along the way, we pick them up, we help them out. And there are government programs that are in place to help people that fall down. But we shouldn't ensure someone's success who's not willing to try. That's not what people should be about. That's not the American way. And of course, that's not the way of free human beings in society, going back to the beginning of time.
Absolutely, I remember Trump.
Yeah, if you don't go hunt, you don't eat, basically.
Yep. Well, that's one of the things Trump was doing when he's making these agreements and stuff, put the USMCA together, and
right.
I don't remember if it was Venezuela or Colombia, but one of them, one of the South American countries, he had went down there to discuss matters with him. They were concerned that they were getting cut out.
Yeah, it'd probably be Colombia, not Venezuela. Venezuela has not been our friend for a long time.
True enough. I think it must have been. I don't know why I'm thinking Venezuela, but I think you're right. It had to be Colombia, and From what I recall of it, he told him, he says, listen, you're making your problems our problems. You got these people coming from down here fleeing your country because you don't take care of your issues in your country. He says, before we can make deals with you, you're going to have to make things better for us by fixing your social problems in your country for your people. And that's what they were working on. And that's the kind of agreements that we were looking for. That's why so many of us voted for Trump, because that was the approach he was using, instead of saying, like you said earlier, with Biden kowtowing. And where are we going to be at now? You know, from what I'm hearing, we got convoys of South Americans fleeing towards this country, walls of them.
Yeah, the caravans are coming up here left and right. And here's the thing. I'm not for our American tax dollars going overseas, basically welfare programs for these other countries in quote unquote foreign aid. But at the same time, if we could make Mexico, Central South America in any way better, where people would want to stay there, I don't have a problem with us working with them to ensure that they can become better, if you will. I'm not saying that we say we're going to basically take red, white, and blue, rah flag stuff down there, and you're going to be basically Americans in other countries. We can't transplant our type of democracy, if you will.
Right.
But at the same time, we can transplant ideas of inalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We can transplant those things. Those things are, those work anywhere. And at the same time, we can have trade agreements with them, so that way they can stay in their own countries and work there and have a good wage. And at the same time, we can sanction their governments that are dirty, that are crooked, that are doing the wrong thing. And at the same time, we can look to try them either in international courts, or if they come to the U.S., try them here. And at the same time, freeze assets. That has that works. At the old carrot and stick. If you do the right thing, we won't freeze your assets. We'll continue to do business with you. But you have a lot of corruption in a lot of these places, which is very sad. But if you work with the everyday people who want something better for themselves, the ones that are fleeing right now, for the most part, a lot of them want something better for themselves. If we could work with them in their own country, they could root out the corruption in the country for themselves, just like Americans could do it here in this country by being involved in politics at the local level, and just ensuring that they go and vote, that they're, ever so often, having their voices heard with their representatives. And that's how you make things better here. And that's how they would make things better there. But anyway, I could go into a thousand different things here and probably be just scratch the surface. But let's make their countries better by working with them in a way that benefits us.
Let me interject, now, if I could, okay? Because we have now, unfortunately, representatives like Representative Sheila Jackson out of Texas that's trying to implement basically a national registry across the United States. And these are the type of comments that we hear from the demigod party. And I'm going to just say a few, okay? Homicide is the leading cause of murder. That was, of course, said by Representative Sheila Jackson.
Sure.
No ordinary American cares about constitutional rights. That's Joe Biden, our president, by the way. Having abortion is no different than having one tonsil removed. That's, of course, Elizabeth Warner. Owning a gun is not a right. If we were right, then it would be in the Constitution. This is, of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. These are the representatives in our office right now. So, how do you necessarily fight against these people that don't even seem to understand what the Constitution is realistically about?
Todd, you posted something on your Facebook page, Todd. What was that? It was from Samuel Clemens? Mark Twain.
Yeah, Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. Yeah, correct. I can't remember which one it was. Let me look. I'll take it. I posted a lot of quotes about him before.
It was the one in regard to.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder whether the world is being run by smart people who are putting us on, or by imbeciles who really mean it. Yeah, that was the quote. Yeah.
As soon as you said that, that's what I thought of. Yeah. You really got to question that. I mean, is AOC just that stupid?
I think she is a bit of an airhead, but at the same time, I think she knows what she's doing, and she's basically what I've heard somebody describe it as this. She's basically the relief valve for the left. She goes out and says what a lot of people are thinking, and it makes probably a lot of these people that are on the left feel okay. Somebody's listening to us. Somebody's taking us serious. We won't go riot today. We won't go burn down the city or whatever. And the numbers of people on the left who do that are small in comparison to the number of people on the left who vote for Democrats. But you keep them quiet because those are a very vocal, loud minority of people. So you keep them happy if you have a few people in Congress who are espousing their beliefs or whatever. So she's kind of the release valve in a sense. I think she believes a lot of it, but at the same time, I think she's being spoon-fed what to say at the same time. She didn't get elected because she woke up one day and said, "I want to go run for Congress." That didn't just happen, and you don't have the people who support her, who fund her. They don't say, "Well, let's support this 20-some-year-old bartender." That just doesn't happen. No,
she worked
there's more involved
in the past,
to that,
and she's been involved politically all along. And the thing she says so incredibly stupid. Yeah. That quote just summed it up. It's
but calling these people stupid or crazy or whatever dismisses them, and you don't have to address them. Oh, whether they're stupid, they're crazy, whatever. But they're still in office. They still have power and sway and a voice. Uh-huh. You've done nothing but made yourself feel better. By the fact you're not involved in politics, it only ensures that people like that can continue to get elected at national, local, whatever level. And in Tennessee, the reason I want to work to get people more involved in politics, and Tennessee's will become a purple state soon, like Texas, for example, North Carolina, Georgia. These are states that used to be pretty doggone safe Republican states. No. Tennessee, we have Memphis, Shelby County, that area, very stronghold for Democrats, the Nashville area, and then the numbers of people that are coming from New York to California and all these other places. Tennessee is one of the top destinations for people fleeing blue states. They're coming here. They're coming here because it's a magnet, because we have jobs. We have a good economy. We don't have any income tax. We don't have any death tax. So we're pretty good across the board. We attract a lot of people. The sad part is they bring their politics with them and they vote the same doggone way. And if we don't get involved at the local level and get involved, especially in safe Republican areas, in larger numbers, you're only going to ensure that Nashville, Memphis, Knoxville, which is growing, and Chattanooga decide statewide elections, which it shouldn't at all.
In regards to what you're saying there too, was William Wyatt pointed it out earlier, that California has become unlivable. I mean, you got people that are actually working but living in tents, homeless, but they have jobs, but they can't afford to support themselves otherwise. And what ends up happening is they're indoctrinated into a liberal mindset in a liberal state, and they're driving them out of that state, seeking, as you described, better locations, more comforts, to have a livable wage. And so what it does is it spreads that whole liberal ideology like a virus throughout the country.
Yeah, and I've heard Democrat congressmen and state legislators in California, in previous years say, "Oh, well, we're transplanting our form of government. We're transplanting our ideology to these other states, like they're doing them a favor." And that's the ideologue. They don't necessarily see that the downfall or the shortcomings of their own plans or their own legislation or whatever. It's because somebody else did something that interfered with their legislation working perfectly. It's always something else is to blame. Cuomo, for example, he knows damn well what the hell he did in New York. He basically got people killed because he's an ideologue. He thinks ideologically. He got people killed up there, and I think the blood is on his hands. I don't want to say he murdered people, but I think he's responsible for a lot of deaths in New York. And of course, he tried to hide all these things. But if you look at his excuses now, he's looking for other people and other things to blame. I mean, he blamed Trump for the longest time. Even though he had to praise Trump early on for giving him everything that he wanted, as soon as the I think it was USS Comfort, as soon as it left New York Harbor, as soon as all these other organizations left because they didn't need them, because Cuomo put everybody in these nursing homes instead of going to these makeshift hospitals, which they should have went to. He went back to bashing Trump again and blaming Trump. Now Trump's out. Now he's looking to blame other people as he goes along. And, the reality is you're caught red-handed. It's kind of like the guy escaping jail or prison. Spotlight's on you, and he freezes. But instead of just taking the rap, he's pointing at all the other people that are trying to escape. He's like, "What about them? What about them?"
Right. The guy that gets pulled over and get a speeding ticket is going to keep pointing at the speeding cars going by.
Right. Yeah. Take the hit. You were wrong. Right. If they get away with it, they get away with it. You didn't. Move on.
Right. It's just it's a weak form of diversion.
Right.
Now, going back to what you were saying earlier, there is a such thing as negligible homicide.
Sure,
unless you're in government, of course. If you're employed by government,
but he by being governor, he has an immunity, unless he actually went out and did pulled a trigger himself. Right. He has certain immunity that's actually that he's protected.
Yeah, the sovereign immunity.
Sovereign immunity, yeah, exactly, yeah. So by the fact that he didn't put the policy in place, knowing people were going to die necessarily, even though anybody that has half a brain would have said, "Hey, let's assess this situation," or would have addressed it once he started seeing people die, which he didn't do. He may not have known that his policy was going to have that type of repercussion. But once you saw that it was having that repercussion, he should have corrected course right away and did something different. Said, "Hey, that policy didn't work. That's on me. I apologize." And people would say, "You know what? He didn't mean to do this. It happens. I can still be upset and angry, obviously, especially if you lose a loved one. But he wasn't malicious. But the fact that he covered it up and didn't change his policy, it didn't even change it in any way. I think he should be on the hook for it, but sadly he's not going to be held accountable outside of political, probably never being able to run for office again. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, Democrats give a lot of people, Ted Kennedy, for example. I mean, hell, whenever he died, he was the lion of the Senate. He was this great, politician, this great senator. Really, he was nothing like that at all. I mean, but he gets away with stuff.
Yeah, that's what William was
pointing out. What are your feelings, honestly, about the lawsuit that's being brought, of course, by the double NCP, and as well as the representative congressman? I'm sorry, I don't have his name in front of me, but they're using the anti-Ku Klux Klan lawsuit filed against him, and they're also filing against the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, which they're calling, of course, white ring extremist groups. What are your feelings, basically, about that particular lawsuit that's being filed against Rudolph Giuliani and former President Trump?
Yeah, so they're not just calling it right wing; they're calling it white supremacist. But if you look at, say, the Proud Boys, for example, a lot of the people who were involved with the Proud Boys weren't white people. I mean, there were a lot of white people involved, certainly, but I think the guy who was in charge of nationally, who was recognized as, I guess, the leader, he wasn't a white guy. He was Hispanic. Am I right?
I believe so. Yes.
Right. So to say that it's white supremacy or whatever, that's just another one of those distractions or whatever. And I think the lawsuit, especially if you're going to try to blame President Trump, I mean, it's another one of those ways to try to go after him. The simple fact is, these organizations that they're talking about aren't white supremacist groups, aren't hate groups. They're no different than Antifa or BLM. And if you're going to say that they're hate groups. Antifa and BLM are absolutely hate groups and are Marxist organizations. These are people that are essentially just want to be left the hell alone. I don't agree with everything that they probably said or done, and not an organization I would belong to. But I don't think that they're white supremacists, and I don't think they're hate groups. Are they culpable in any way for somebody's death? Maybe, perhaps. I don't know. I don't think they went to the Capitol with the thought that, hey, people are going to die here. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't believe that they went there with that in mind. But at the same time, probably not a good idea to storm the Capitol on January 6th. That basically undermined the narrative and undermined what was going on there anyway. You had senators and members of Congress that had really good objections that should have been allowed to be what the news cycle ran with for the next couple of days or next couple of weeks. Instead, what did you do? You undermined that. You destroyed that ability for that to be the story. Instead, it's the storming of the Capitol is the story of the day. And at the same time, now it's something that we can go after Republicans and Trump supporters with. We have now another tool or another weapon to be able to go after them. And what can you really say? Oh, that's not me. That's not what I believe in, which is not. It's not what the vast majority of Republicans, Trump supporters, and people on the right actually believe in. It's a very small fringe minority of individuals, but they're never going to let you live it down, especially the mainstream media. They're never going to let you live that down. But these guys at the same time undermine what they believe in at the end of the day.
Do you feel like maybe as far as that a so-called insurgency goes at the Capitol building, and I say so-called because it seems that doors have been opened, and right. Do you think that may have been plants from Antifa and things like that to egg that on, such as they called that, what's his last name, Johnson, out in Arizona who was egging people on, and he was supposed to be a reporter, but yeah, he was engaged in it at the same time.
Right. You know, here's the thing. For somebody to say that it was an inside job, it was Antifa and BLM, they did it. Well, even if they did plan and organize it, let's just say they did, just for example, for devil's advocate here. You have people that were Trump supporters, you had people that were Proud Boys and all these other organizations that also went and stormed the Capitol at the same time.
They did. They
didn't make you go and storm the Capitol. They didn't make you go break things and fight people and hurt people and, you know, beat police officers or whatever. They didn't make you do that. You chose to do that. You know, so you should suffer the repercussions at the. That's the way I look at it.
Everybody is responsible for their own actions. If you participated, you participated.
But to try to everybody wants to get involved with these conspiracy theories, and it basically absolves them of any sort of guilt, if you will, or any guilt that they may feel, or it's a way to kind of shift back toward the Democrats to say, well, it's an inside job. You guys did this, which you're only going to be throwing mud back and forth at one another. You had a small number of individuals who were Trump supporters who did something that was wrong. And it doesn't reflect the vast majority of Trump supporters, Republicans, conservatives, like I just said. Not at all. So I think people should just, allow those people to take the punishment. But to say that Trump, he was in on it, that's just all BS. That's nonsense.
Yeah,
to
right.
say if the president wanted to commit, what were they trying to say, insurrection? Mm-hmm. Don't you think he would have sent the Army or the Marines or something like that? Or a large number of those contingencies to go over there? Because I dare say, and not being a veteran, being a retired military guy, the majority of people in the military are on the right, are conservative, libertarian types. Anyway, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to say they're far right would have went over and just did something unconstitutional with the president's blessing, but don't you think that that's where he would have started? Not some sort of a few hundred people or a couple hundred people that are just coming up with some clubs or this and that. Come on now.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, that was an issue in itself because supposedly the D.C. police said that they asked for backup and didn't get backup. Nancy Pelosi prior, when BLM and Antifa was in D.C., was going against Trump and claiming he was wrong, calling his use of force as being part of the what did she use? It wasn't Gestapo. What was the word she used? Stormtroopers.
Stormtrooper tactics. Yeah, they were burning a damn church down.
Yeah,
but you said nothing about the church being burned down being wrong. Oh, that's how they express themselves. They express themselves as burning down a historical church. St. John's is right across from Lafayette Park there, right across from the White House. It's known as the Church of the Presidents, but that's every president going back since that church was built has went to at least one church service there. And Trump went there. I think probably Joe Biden went there. I'm not sure. I don't know if they're having services or not, but I'm sure he will, as president, walk over there one day. But they're burning down a damn church right in front of the White House, and you're going to say, "Oh, you shouldn't have done anything." That's how they express themselves, and make Trump the bad guy. I'm sorry, enforcing laws, saying that you can't commit arson or burn down businesses and beat people, stone people, and kill people. That's what Nancy Pelosi should be standing right beside the president, saying, "Hey, you're not going to do this here. You're not going to do this here. You're not going to do it in Portland. You're not going to do it in Seattle. You're not going to do it anywhere because that's not what we do as Americans. We have discussions and we talk about things. We don't sit here and condone stuff like this. But guess what? They do. They condone that. They condone that type of violence because they know it's going to work for them.
We should, as citizens, we should conduct ourselves in a dignified manner.
Right.
And there's nothing dignified tearing down statues and throwing rocks at the police and such like that.
You want to have a debate on whether or not we should have Confederate statues in a state capitol. Oh, let's have that debate. But don't go up unilaterally and just throw a rope around it and tear it down. Right. It's up. People purposely put it up there, and there's a process to have it removed and maybe move to an organization. Maybe want to take ownership of it, or maybe a museum would want it. But don't just go up there and burn it because I disagree with it.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe.
You
don't have that right.
Is that with all this insurrection that they so-called said that was going on in D.C., but yet all the insurrection that was going on all over the country,
right?
Or even one of our very own, and many of our truck drivers have been personally afflicted, as well as the fact that cities have been burned down and businesses have been looted, and we're talking about an individual life also was actually put on the line. among many of these times, especially for our law enforcement officers. And yet we've heard no foul or no cry or whatsoever from the demagogue party that called for any legal action against any of these type of people. If they're going to implement a lawsuit against former President Trump and Rudolph Giuliani, then why did they not implement this lawsuit also against Antifa as well as to BLM that had done it across the entire country?
Right.
If I may say so.
Instead of bailing them out of jail, which Vice President Harris bailed them out of jail. And then, we at least know of a couple people that actually went out and committed more crime and actually caused the death of people. But that's people she bailed out and she supported that. But do we say, oh, she's to blame for that because that person went out and did that? No, she's not to blame because that person did that. That person chose to do that. But she gave that person the means to get out of jail to go do that, though. I think she's responsible to some degree. It should be held liable, even if it's just politically. And if she was held liable politically, she would never have been elected vice president, which I don't think she was elected anyway. But that's another topic.
You're in good company in that regard.
Yeah. But that's another topic, obviously.
So now we got a few minutes left here, probably about 10, 15 minutes, I guess,
okay.
And about 10 at least. Anyway, I was wondering, with coronavirus and stuff like that, do you see this as a real threat, behavior modification, people control, or?
Yeah, here's the thing, and people will say, well, conspiracy theory, they did this because of this. I don't necessarily think that, but here's the deal. Once you see something works, well, shoot, we could use that again down the road. That coronavirus thing worked where we had people locked down and people not being able to go to work and open up their businesses and, not being able to make a living. We'll throw a stimulus check their way every now and then, not being able to go to school. So we can control more things by doing something like this. Once they see something works, well, shoot, what's going to stop people from using it in the future? It's not, I don't want to say it's a conspiracy that they've done it now. I don't think that the coronavirus was a big conspiracy that Democrats were in on. I think the Chinese either purposely let it out of the Wuhan lab, or it was a sheer accident that they didn't own up to. Either way, the Chinese can't be trusted. Regardless whether it was an accident or on purpose, is besides the point. It got out there and they did nothing until we found out about it months later. And at the same time, you have Democrats that see an opportunity, California, New York, to inflict their will. So it's an opportunity.
How the virus originated from, and what was really sad about it, though, is not too long ago, the foreign minister of actual China, when they were talking about what we're going through among this deep freeze, of course, among the South, had pointed out that China is absolutely going in the absolute true and right direction. You could see by the poor example of the United States on the way how they characterize and leave their people starving and leave their people hungry without power, but China would never be able to be the example among this priming light. That's, of course, a headline that came from the Times, of course, the New York Slimes, that came out from the foreign minister of China. So, that's the thing that I don't understand. It seems to be allowable for other countries to realistically insult us in the United States, especially during the time we're down. But we can't seem to implement the truth on where this virus actually originated and came from.
Right. And part of the reason, obviously, we know this, you have a lot of big businesses that, if not for China, they're not going to be a big business. Nike is one of them. And also a lot of these industries that, like NBA, for example, you have a lot of these people that make a lot of money because of the connections with China making all their merchandise and so forth. So they're not going to say anything because the NBA would lose a hell of a lot of money if that were the case. And at the same time, you have people that are ideological on the left that are pushing more towards communism. So they're not going to say anything anyway because they would like to have the heavy hand of government, rested in their own hands. But they're so they're not going to say anything. So they're ideological. I guess they're simpatico. That's what I'm saying. So they're not going to say anything.
Interesting. Okay, I'm sorry, John. I had to interrupt a little bit about.
No, that was okay. That was all right. I think we're running out of time here anyway. We got about 4 minutes left. Got to make some announcements, Joe. We haven't made any announcements in regard to up-and-coming shows, so I just want to remind everybody tomorrow night at 7 o'clock we do have Trucking with the Schmidts. Lisa and Lee Schmidt do a really nice show every Monday night. It's At 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Tuesday night, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, we have the Witches Brew. They're crack up bunch of ladies. They're a lot of fun to listen to. And for religious purposes, we do have Amazing Grace on Thursday evenings at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. That's with that's Amazing Grace with Chaplain Scott Reed and also fellow pastors or preachers.
Holy Ghost Rider.
Huh?
The Holy Ghost Rider. Sorry.
The Holy Ghost Rider, Scott Reed. Yes. That's with Stephen Myers and Dave Sexton. Guys, we hope that you'll join us in these other shows. And Todd, with our last few minutes, do you have anything you'd like to wrap up with?
Yeah, sure. Well, we give a shout out to Scott Reed since you brought him up, and I should have said this earlier. I appreciate him connecting us here together, so that way we have this show together. I really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate Scott, by the way, everything he's done and what he continues to do for truckers as well. So I appreciate that. If anybody wants to follow me on, if you're still on Twitter, at Todd for House, TODD number 4 HOUSC. Also on Parler, I got to maybe get a different platform. Maybe I can go online and bring Parler up. I'm on Parler as well, at Todd for House. Facebook, you can search at Todd for House as well, or the Todd McKinley commentary. Just type in Todd McKinley commentary and like and share the page. And I try to comment on there on a daily basis, at least a few times a day, on some things that are going on out there in society. But yeah, if you want to engage with me, by all means, send me a message, comment, whatever. Love to talk to people, and hopefully we can get more people involved and get active. I don't think I'm some sort of big wig or any sort of big to do. I'm an individual like most of you guys, like JoJo. We're trying to just make a change in our communities and make a difference in society. We're not somebody gets paid $1 million to go sit on Fox News or CNN or whatever like that. We just want to make a difference in our community and change what we can change.
Awesome.
Uh-huh.
You have a show as well, though, Todd. That you do weekly.
Yeah, I do interviews on occasion. Not a show like this, but I occasionally interview people, and then just that's about it. I was going to do a podcast, and of course, whenever I got hired with the Trump campaign, I was like, well, I can't do a podcast and be on the Trump campaign, so I kind of shelved the idea of doing a podcast. But I do occasionally do interviews with community activists and at the same time candidates for office that I like, and throw them out there and help them out a little bit if I can.
Awesome.
Well,
All
right,
definitely appreciate you coming
I'll have to have you
on.
guys on at some point too.
I mean, you're a great individual. That I will say that if you have any intentions in the future of being able to come to office, I will only say that it would be a great honor. I hope I would actually own some land in your district so I could put a vote there for you, because it would be great to have you as an individual representing, the great state of Tennessee as well in any capacity whatsoever. And I hope in every way that you have the intention of going for that. I don't know when or whatever, but that would be a great thing, of course. It's an honor actually having you on the show as well, which I think is a great thing, and we hope we can always continue to encourage.
Oh, heck yeah, and I hope to come back on here and chat again, and maybe different topics, but hope everybody, if you watch this program, you're introduced to who I am, and maybe you can take a little bit of what I said and what we talked about here and run with it in your own community in some way and make a difference.
We do like repeat guests, so anytime you got a subject you want to talk about, or you just want to come on, make an announcement, even if you only want 5 minutes, or you want to come on for a whole show, we'll schedule you again, man. We'd love to have you back on.
I love it. Hey, heck yeah. And also, everybody, in case you're wondering what I'm looking at my computer screen. That way, it's like I'm looking at you whenever you're talking instead of looking right at the camera, which, whatever. Whenever I do the interviews, I have my computer's usually down, so I'm always looking down at my computer to make sure it's still going. But that's what I'm looking at as we're doing the interview. So that way, people are like, "What the heck's he looking at?"
I do the same thing. I look at the person I'm talking to on the screen instead of up at the camera. I can't look at a camera. I don't know why. It drives me nuts.
Yeah,
it does. I'm uncomfortable in front of a camera anyway, but I do it in spite of that fact.
You do a heck of a job, and I appreciate what you do, man.
Thank you.
It's good. You're trying to make a difference in your industry and in your community, just the same.
We're trying. We're trying to put together. We did put together a community page for truck drivers. I got to post that, and I did, just so people know, in the description of this show, I did post your Facebook links that you mentioned.
Good. Thank you.
They are there. If anybody just wants to click on them and go over to your pages, they're more than welcome to. I'm gonna look you up on Parler too, by the way. I didn't know you were out there. In fact, Parler just came back up not too long ago. A couple of weeks?
Yep, and I don't think it's working on some of the some platforms like Apple. I don't think it's working on. But I'm going to see if I can just bring it up here just do a web search. I'm going to see if I can bring it up there. And if I can, I'll just use it on my laptop. So whatever.
All right. Yeah, I don't remember if it's working on the app. I signed into it, and I remember it was kind of a pain in the butt to have to sign into.
Yeah.
But I got in there, and I'm good now. I thought I did it on the app. I want to thank everybody for commenting tonight, too. The comments really help the show. It helps to get it out there and get more people reach. William, you were awesome, man. All the comments you were making, they were excellent comments. We had some other good comments in there, of course, too. I don't mean to negate
Aaron
anybody.
Pettigrew also just joined us in over there.
Oh, Aaron, yeah,
He's
Tennessee.
Run in the great state of Tennessee, by the way. Great person, by the way. Can only appreciate it. And he says, of course,
truck driver too.
William says, of course, Parler does not work. John, before we close out, I want to give some love out to rightload.com. I want to give anybody out there that is looking to try to be able to get themselves away from the brokers. Join rightload.com, my friends. It is a great service that will get you directly connected to the shippers and the receivers. And for those of you out there that are looking for health care, we were talking about health care, by the way. There's a great program called Health for You that is out there. It's not a health insurance program, but it is a direct health insurance system that will be mainly for truck drivers to be able to get a network system. I will tell you that it's a very easy, great system for everybody to get on board. I've looked into it. It has great benefits and great exclusions for everybody, especially for truck drivers that need to be able to get their medication, to be able to go direct for doctor visits. It is a great service. It's called healthforyou.com. You can download it on the app out there for my friends out there. So for all my brothers and sisters, God bless you, and we appreciate all of you out there for working so hard.
And William would like me to acknowledge...
Sorry, not William. Sorry, Chris Wyatt. Sorry.
I was going to say, William would like me to acknowledge. His name is actually Chris. He goes by Chris. But he does have William on his Facebook page. Todd, do you know if you're going to be doing a show with Chris? Is anything but solidified?
Yeah, he's texted me, and he just texted me as we were on this program. He's like, "Is that you?" I was like, "Yep, that's me." So
yeah,
I'd love to. Yeah, he's a smart man, big genius level IQ right there.
In fact, I can almost think of his first name, Mastriano, and He and Chris are friends as well. Yep,
up in your neck of the woods. So
I'm looking forward to that show, Chris. You got to give me a note or whatever when you're going to do that one. I want to share it too, so we can all catch them.
Definitely, I want to share it out there as well. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I'll do the same thing. Hell yeah.
I mean, send me a link.
So we say we're at the end of the show, but we carry on. You're having fun when you carry on, right? But I do need to get off here. I got a little pup dog waiting on me. He wants his walk, and he's probably getting ready to have some bladder splatter if I don't get my butt down there and get him outdoors. So
appreciate it, John. Appreciate it, JoJo. Everybody, man. We'll keep rocking and rolling. We'll try to make a difference. Even if we can only reach just a few people, man, we'll do it.
Absolutely. I guarantee you this will reach quite a few people. So, all right. As always, folks, keep the greasy side down, the shiny side up, in between the lines, and safe travel wherever you're going. Always be good at it. If you can't, always be good. If you can't be good at it. Good night, everybody.
God bless.
All right. See you guys. I appreciate it.
Bye.
See ya.